Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hey, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your gracious host, Mark Swan. I hope you're having a weird and wonderful week. I know I am. As of the time of this recording, it is May 4th, 2021, also known as May the 4th Be With You, the unofficial holiday that celebrates all things Star Wars. I myself, I'm not a big Star Wars guy. I like the movies. I watch some of the cartoons, but never really my thing. Nevertheless, I'm here to celebrate with you. I think I'm really more into the controversy that surrounds Star Wars. For whatever reason, I really love hearing all sorts of critiques about the movies and stuff, and I really am interested in things like how the original trilogy was such a big deal, and that was before my time, probably before a lot of listeners' times, but I'd love to hear experiences from our older listeners who got to see Star Wars, the original trilogy, in theaters. I was 11 years old when Star Wars Episode 1 came out. I saw it with my big brother. I remember liking it, but I remember it being way too loud. And then I watched the rest of the trilogy and I didn't super get into it. And I don't remember having an opinion either way, but I do know that a lot of people really, really hated the original trilogy, which is super funny to me because now they're kind of celebrated. I don't know. It's a movie series for kids, and I think a lot of people forget that. And so when you have older Star Wars fans get a little peeved off by the newer movies, you just kind of have to remember it was a science fiction fantasy story that was meant to sell action figures and memorabilia, and it has certainly been successful at that. Of course, Disney purchased the Star Wars franchise some years ago, and alongside Marvel, they have been pumping out content in the Star Wars universe, and now that's kind of creating controversy for itself. But I don't see why. I liked the new movies. Say what you will. Say what you will. That's all I can say. I like them. Regardless, it is a phenomenon, and therefore we celebrate it on the Weird News Podcast. Before moving on, I would suggest that anybody out there who has not seen the absolutely wonderful documentary, The People versus George Lucas, see if you can find it on a streaming service. I know it used to be on Netflix, but maybe not anymore. You might have to go and dig for it. Just a great movie that shows all walks of Star Wars life, celebrating and possibly harshly criticizing the series. Moving on, I wanted to follow up from a story that I covered a couple episodes ago where I talked about biblically accurate angels, and I repeatedly made references to the angels covering their feet with their wings and not necessarily knowing what that meant. There were several references in my notes to angels having wings. I had a talk with my producer about this particular subject, and they actually had some insight on this. They said, generally, when you read the word feet in the Old Testament, it is actually a euphemism for genitals. So when angels are described as having wings that cover their feet, nope, they're just being modest. I love that piece of information. Thank you to Sarah, my producer, for bringing that up. That's really, really funny to me. So I'm glad I learned something even more. One sad piece of news today before we get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. I'm sad to say that a couple days ago, Bill and Melinda Gates, probably some of the richest and most philanthropic people on the planet, they have announced that they're getting a divorce. Very, very sad. It is a weird and difficult time right now. Even if you are a multimillionaire / billionaire and I guess the pressure of life probably just took a toll on the Gates. So best of luck to the both of them as they move on to their separate lives. One good piece of news, though, is that they will continue to work together as far as their charity foundations go, which is great. I have been personally affected by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They built one of the best libraries I've ever been to in my hometown. So I'm thankful for them and sad to see them split. But I digress. We have a great show for you today. Today, we are talking about a time traveler who's making the news with a prediction for 2026. And some outlets are taking it seriously. I don't know. We're going to dive into it and see what you think. Also today, we're talking about Dogecoin. I may have mentioned a couple episodes ago that I was making a little bit of money off of this. It is becoming a phenomenon, and it is a weird thing indeed to have people making money off of memes. What a time to live in. After that, I am talking the history of the middle finger. That'll be a fun one because we go to social media for that one. And I'm topping it all off with my top 5 alternate reality games. And if you don't know what an alternate reality game is, you may be interested to find one of the weirdest and coolest things to happen in this modern day life. Let's get right into it, shall we? A TikTok account is getting a lot of attention around the internet because the user who runs the account is claiming to be a time traveler and is making a lot of weird and brazen predictions about the future. The user, who goes by the handle @timetraveler2582, has accumulated over 600,000 followers and has videos with over 400,000 views. The video in question features a bunch of scenes from different apocalyptic movies and has text and voiceovers making claims that on June 6th, 2026, the Earth will have a 3-day blackout, and also claims that pyramids will appear in the sky and warns viewers to not look at them. Now, I am going to bring up the TikTok and play the audio over the mic, and then I'll do my best to describe what the text says on screen, and then maybe we'll dissect it a little bit. All right, so I have it queued up. I'm going to go ahead and hit play here. Make sure the audio is good.
Close and secure all possible entrances to your home. Switch off all lights. Do not look out of any windows. Do not respond to any knocks on your windows or doors until the all clear is given. Remain silent at all times. Do not attempt to interact with anyone outside of your home.
So that's just a sample of the audio. It's really just seems to be a scary warning, sort of something that would show up on your emergency service, but a little science fiction-y. I'm going to read out what the TikTok says verbatim. It says, "Warning everyone, this video isn't a joke. 6/6/2026. Yes, I'm a real time traveler. What I'm about to reveal is never seen before. Believe it or not, this has indeed happened on the 6th day of 6th month of 2026. Starting at this time on that date, the Earth will enter into 3 days of darkness. Do not look at them. Do not look up in the sky at the light coming from the pyramids. Do not use any man-made lighting except candles. Remain at home. Be safe. Be prepared. You have been warned." And that's where the video ends. And the thing is that this is one of dozens upon dozens of videos, all making claims that they are from the future, travel back in time, and are warning us of future events. And this is the post that has gotten a ton of traction, gotten the channel a lot of attraction. And the account is not afraid to make claims that vary between slightly predictable and downright ridiculous. I do urge you to find this person on TikTok if you use the platform, or you can simply find them online. Once again, that is at timetraveler2582, just to see what all the fuss is about. It is an interesting thing that's making a lot of headway, regardless of if you believe these kinds of things or not. And the account is getting a lot of support, but is understandably getting a lot of criticism. There are comments that are saying they are highly skeptical, and why wouldn't you be? Time travel isn't a thing that is proven. It is only speculated upon. It's not even theorized. And as far as my understanding goes, if a lot of scientific understandings of time travel involve it being incredibly difficult, if possible at all. But at this time, there's no scientific proof that such a thing is possible. Meanwhile, people who are a bit more trusting of the accounts are expressing their fear in these predictions. And to them, I don't blame you. This person is coming on and making some bold and scary claims, especially the world going dark and there being a presence of flying pyramids. One thing for certain is the only way we'll be able to give Time Traveler 2582 any sort of credence is to wait for one of their predictions to pass. And if the day comes and their prediction is not true, well, there you go. They're either full of baloney or there's some sort of science fiction reason to it, such as, ooh, Time Traveler 2582 came to the timeline where this didn't happen, and actually their other predictions are going to come true, and we need to pay attention to them. The only reason I'm giving them so much scrutiny is because Time Traveler 2582 is not the first time traveler to come and make such bold claims. In fact, humanity has always had a fascination with the idea that there is someone coming from a time where things have already happened to come and warn us, and people are often miraculously trusting. Weird news enthusiasts may remember the name John Titor. Mr. Titor was a presence on the internet in the early 2000s who claimed to be a time-traveling soldier from Tampa, Florida. He said that he traveled back in time from 2036 with all sorts of fun predictions, mostly having to do with IBM computers, but also about political stances, wars, national conflicts, worldwide conflicts, all sorts of science. He made a lot of bold claims, and a lot of them eventually turned out to be garbage. They weren't true. And he's even made claims that still haven't come to pass. However, Titor did make some vague predictions that some would argue have a sort of Nostradamus-type quality in their truthiness. Look it up. And speaking of Nostradamus, how could we host a segment about predictions without talking about Nostradamus? The 16th century self-proclaimed prophet, and his teachings and words have subsisted throughout the years, and a lot of his claims have even been interpreted for predictions of modern events, including the rise and fall of Hitler, and even the terrorist attacks on 9/11. I remember being a freshman in high school when the World Trade Center fell, and scouring the internet and just being completely freaked out by reading this super vague Nostradamus passage that talked about two shining towers falling in flame or something like that, and how modern older people were claiming that this was some sort of Nostradamus prediction. What I mean to say is that even though we are living in modern times of technology and rational thought, we are still bound by the idea that there is something going on that we really can't explain, and things like future predictions and searing and, all of that fun stuff could still possibly be real. Whether you think it's fun or whether you actually believe in it, I have no comments either way, but the fact stands that we as people are fascinated with the idea that we can predict things before they happen. And one of the most famous predictions is, of course, of the end of the world. Does anybody else remember 2012, in which scholars studying the Mayan calendar realized that their predictions of their star map ended in the year 2012, and certain people took that to mean that the Mayans had accurately predicted the end of the world on that year? Well, as you could probably tell, it didn't end on 2012. Or what about the year previous, when Christian radio host Harold Camping predicted that on May 21st, 2011, that all Christian peoples would be raptured up to heaven, while all people remaining would herald in the end of the world. Of course, that didn't happen, and then it didn't happen the next year because of the Mayan calendar. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're always going to seemingly be obsessed with the end of the world, and many of us are going to get so worked up that we're going to almost hope for it in a very cynical way, or at the very least look for any sort of predictions and expect them to come true. Regardless, you can take Time Traveler 2582's TikTok videos any way you slice them. I would suggest you take them with a grain of salt, or at the very least, see them as entertaining. If you want my take on it, this person is going on a popular social media platform and posting just videos or clips from movies and then just putting their spin on events that are going to happen. And to me, as a skeptic, that kind of takes away some credence for me. And they may just be making an art project, and to that, I salute them. Or maybe they believe they're a time traveler, and for that, good on ya. Or, what's equally as likely in this day and age is they are participating in an alternate reality game, which ties into the end of our show, so stick around where we talk about alternate reality games, because if you're interested in Time Traveler 2582's TikTok account, you may be participating in one right now. Once again, that's at the end of the show, but when we come back, we are talking about the hot new cryptocurrency that's going around and making a couple people rather wealthy, or at least getting people a couple $100. That's right, we are talking about the Dogecoin after the break. This is the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Swan, and I'll see you and talk to you in a little bit.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Hey, it's me, Mark Swan, your host. And before the break, we were talking about a TikTok time traveler who is making some wild predictions about the future that have people on edge or have them entertained or have them rolling their eyes. Is this person legit? Are they telling the truth? Are they really a time traveler? Are they part of an alternate reality game? We'll get to that later today. Whatever you believe, I think we can all agree that even looking back the last year, it's hard to make certain predictions in this wild, weird world. And who could have predicted a meme becoming a viable form of currency? It has been a strange year for the global economy and the stock market in general. You may have been present a couple months ago for the whole GameStop stock fiasco, in which normal people who may not have been into investing before started buying stock in the failing company for the purposes of sticking it to those investment bankers and higher ups who may or may not be using their leverage to stimulate the economy in their favor, perhaps manipulating how the money works around the entire world. It became a week-long event in which a lot of people with a lot of money were freaking out that people with not so much money were doing things to take away their money. It's honestly a process that is far too complicated for me to even try to explain, which is sort of a more modest way of saying I don't understand what happened. What I do know is that I definitely bought some GME stock back when that was happening, and I didn't profit from it. I kind of bought in right at the last minute when it sort of took a nosedive. I pretty much immediately sold what I bought at a loss and washed my hands of it, which was probably an unwise idea because GameStop really profited from the whole situation, and I guess they are now a recovering company, and the people who kept their GME stock are flourishing. I guess what I'm trying to say is this last weird year did a lot of interesting things to how our money and our stock market works. I think a lot of people affected by COVID were bored at home and with nothing else to do but maybe spend their stimulus or their unemployment on some stock options or some cryptocurrencies. The reason why I bring this up, and specifically GME, is in the wake of the whole GameStop situation, the cryptocurrency known as Dogecoin is seeing an incredible increase in its value. And it's sort of making waves in ways that people, and especially financial analysts, could never have predicted. And it begs the question, where did this Dogecoin come from? And are people really stocking all of their money into a meme? And before we get into the cryptocurrency, we are going to get into the meme. According to knowyourmeme.com, Doge, and I am pronouncing that correctly. I used to call it dog or doge. It's D-O-G-E, but it's pronounced Doge. Doge is a slang term for dog that is primarily associated with pictures of the Shiba Inus, which are just adorable, cute dogs. My partner and I want one. And internal monologue captions on Tumblr. These photos may be photoshopped to change the dog's face or captioned with interior monologues in Comic Sans font. If you are the type of person who peruses memes in your daily life and loves to send them to your friends, family members, perhaps your enemies, you are most likely no stranger to the Doge. He is certainly one of the more charming memes that has persisted through the years. And in 2013, two software engineers by the name of Billy Marcus and Jackson Palmer decided to author their own cryptocurrency using Doge as the mascot. Dogecoin was created as a sort of parody to other cryptocurrencies at the time, which were seen as volatile and perhaps not to be taken as seriously as they were. Bitcoin was basically in its rebellious teenage years, where it had incredibly high highs and low lows, and a lot of people trying to jump in on the cryptocurrency phenomenon at the time were either seeing ridiculous profit increases by buying very tiny valued coins and watching them spike up as more and more people got interested, only to see them lose all of their money a day later due to one situation or another. The Dogecoin, as you could tell by its namesake, was not really a coin to be taken very seriously. However, it approached the cryptocurrency world in a few different ways than Bitcoin. Once again, I am not a cryptocurrency expert, nor would I be a person who could even try to explain this, but I'll do my best to say that Dogecoin is different because it uses different processes than Bitcoin, making it somewhat independent of Bitcoin's success. There are other cryptocurrencies out there that are almost entirely dependent on how well Bitcoin is doing. That is not the case for Doge. Another difference is that Dogecoins are produced at a much faster rate than Bitcoin and many other cryptocurrencies. If only some of those words made sense to you, I don't blame you. Crypto market is a brand new thing that a lot of very smart people are only now getting into. It is something that is not even understood by the people who produce and use it. Don't be intimidated, just know that this is a wild, weird new world for money. And at Dogecoin's founding, it was meant to be an ironic look at that world. That being said, the developers had no idea how successful their crypto was going to turn out. In December of 2013, Dogecoin's value jumped nearly 300% over the course of 72 hours, making a lot of early adopters pretty wealthy. That was until a couple days later when there was a major cryptocurrency theft and many Dogecoins were lost forever. Throughout the years since its development, the cryptocurrency has seen its ups and downs, but has really only maintained a value of around less than 1 cent per Dogecoin. That was until summer of last year during the height of COVID times, when Redditors and members of other social networks banded together to try and bring up the Doge's value to $1 per coin. In January of 2021, the Doge's value shot up over 800% to 7 cents per coin after many celebrities and other public figures took notice. If I'm timing the airing of this episode correctly, you may be listening to this episode right after Elon Musk mentioned Dogecoin on Saturday Night Live, which probably had a significant effect on the coin's value. And Elon himself has been a huge proponent of the Dogecoin, probably because the guy likes memes. I don't know how to feel about one of the richest human beings on the planet being so obsessed on memes going to Twitter and talking about them. But hey, if you're into Dogecoin right now, Elon is definitely your ally. Now, things really started heating up for the crypto in April of 2021, which is about 1 month ago from this recording, in which the coin has been growing in value ever since. And along the way, users of the coin have been able to do some good and interesting things around the world. For instance, in 2014, according to Wikipedia, members of the Dogecoin community banded together to fundraise the Jamaican bobsled team to the 2014 Winter Olympics. If you're a fan of old comedy movies like me, you have of course seen the classic Cool Runnings about the Jamaican bobsled team. If you haven't seen that, please put it on your Weird News recommended movie list. I love this movie, and the reason why I bring up the movie is because I have to assume it goes hand in hand with the Dogecoin's propensity to act on all things meme-y. I have to assume that people put this fundraiser together just because they were such fans of the movie, and probably because they were fans of the underdogs of the Jamaican bobsled team, or should I say underdoges. After that, the community participated in the Doge for Water campaign to fundraise a building of a well at the Tana River Basin in Kenya. The donations reached over $11,000, and the campaign was successful. At the time of this recording, one Dogecoin is equal to about 55 cents, and is rapidly growing every day. And much like any other cryptocurrency or stock market exchange, it has its dips and its rises, but it seems as though the coin is here to stay. And I'll be frank with you, yes, I did buy some Doge around the beginning of the year. I bought it when it was cheap. I'm not going to say how much I bought, but I am pretty happy with the results, not to brag. Once again, I am not a financial advisor or an expert. I'm just an idiot with a cell phone and a Robinhood app and a couple bucks that I could throw down on something that was not only funny, but seemed to be profitable at the same time. Once again, I am just tickled that there are so many people who are buying in on something that was originally basically a joke. I love this modern world where we are buying weird things and having good results from them. That's why I went to social media and I asked my friends, my family, my followers, my listeners, and everybody in between, what is the weirdest thing you've ever spent money on? And I got some great results, and I'm just going to go down the list. Allie from Facebook says, ATM fees. It's really weird to pay for your money. And Allie, that's not necessarily the answer I was looking for, but this is a great answer, and it just blows my mind. I am not a person who uses ATMs anymore, and that's specifically why. It is so weird that we are living in a system where you have to buy your own money in certain situations. What are you doing? Yeah, pull out $20 and it costs you $24. Don't even get me started at ATMs at concert venues. I mean, that should be a crime. Thomas from Facebook says 96 rubber unicorn duckies. Thomas, I want to know how much that costs. And I want to know where you store them all. And I wonder if you put them in the bath, all 96 of them. Hey, it's not my money. You do you, man. Ryan from social media says 2 words, healthcare. And then he follows it up with a gif of the drummer going, ba-doomts. Yeah, Ryan, no comment there. We're not really a politically driven news show, but good answer. Carrie from Facebook says, cat liposuction. I really want to learn the story on this. I have to assume there was a big old fat cat, and I am once again brought to the memes because if I see a fat cat, I want to call him a heckin' chonker, and I know that meme enthusiasts will know what that is. Probably not as big as Doge right now, especially with the coin going on, but I think I might invest in some heckin' chonker coin. Tori from social media also says health insurance, and yep, hey, well, maybe we'll get into it someday, but not today. Daniel from Facebook says Dr. Watson replica sword cane. I'm assuming this is Dr. Watson from the Sherlock Holmes movie where Jude Law plays Dr. Watson. And I don't think that's weird. I think that's cool, Daniel. I'm really glad that you bought that. I hope that you haven't had to use it yet, but also I kind of hope you have had to use it. Regardless, I hope you are using it at all as a cane, even if you don't need it to help walk. I say that's a good purchase. Alicia from social media says, a lifetime of free concert tickets to a band that broke up like a month later. R.I.P. That is a sad story. And to that, I have to say, support your local bands or support your favorite bands, but definitely don't expect them to last forever. Jenny from Facebook says, my ex. Oh, well, I think a lot of people have been there. Sorry to hear that, Jenny, but good for you. And Jacob from Facebook says, a Doctor Who condom. Listen, we're not the GSMC sex podcast, but I'm sure that we could maybe go in conjunction that podcast and this one, and we could get your story and maybe tell something about it. But whatever you bought that for, I hope it was equitable. Our last answer comes from Sarah, the host of the GSMC Music podcast. Shout out to you, Sarah. Her answer to my question, what's the weirdest thing you've ever spent money on, was a psychic drawing of my future soulmate, and then follows it up with an emoji of the girl slapping her forehead, Picard style. Sarah, I don't know. We here at Weird News, we always promote and regale in the psychic. So I say that wasn't a weird purchase. I say it was a good one. And hey, speaking of our other GSMC podcasts, we have a ton. Not only music, not only entertainment, not only television. We have science podcasts. We have engineering podcasts. We have other news podcasts. And I encourage you to listen to them all because I think they're good. If you like the Weird News podcast, you may enjoy some of the others. Look us up on all social media, as well as any podcast app that you use. After the break, we are talking about the history of the middle finger. I found this on a whim. I was just thinking about it. Not a big user of it, but I am still fascinated. And there is a lot more information on this thing than I expected. So we'll go over that. And then at the end of the show, we are going over my top 5 alternate reality games. This is the GSMC Weird News Podcast, and we'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
What's up, everybody? This is the GSMC Weird News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your weird and wonderful host, Mark Swan, and we've just been having a real fun time today. Today, we've been talking about time travel, the usual. We've been talking about Dogecoin. And hey, I would love to know if you invested in Dogecoin in this weird and wonderful time when a meme could be profitable. Go ahead and hit me up on social media. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on many social media platforms. Just look up GSMC Weird News. I want to hear your Dogecoin experiences, or really just your experience with cryptocurrency anyway. And actually, while we're at it, could somebody please explain to me what an NFT is? I've been looking it up, and I don't super get cryptocurrency anyway. Yeah, I know, old man, you need to catch up. It's the wave of the future. Leave me be. But NFT, or non-fungible token, it's like a thing that it's like a piece of art that exists digitally, but you can buy it and it belongs to you, even though it still exists on the internet. And it's another way that people are making cash and using it as its own currency. I guess it's crashing and bubbling and doing whatever it is that these volatile money market things do, but it came out of nowhere. I don't know what it is. Anyway, moving on. I am having such a wonderful time with the GSMC Weird News podcast. This is such a cool platform, having a great time. I do want to point out to anybody that's curious, we are a safe for work podcast. We do our best not to get into anything too raunchy or just nothing you want your kids to hear. That being said, I got the idea for this next segment from an interaction I had on the street the other day. First off, I want to say that that we are getting out of these weird COVID times when the traffic is getting back to normal. Blech, I kind of hate it, but I will say for all the awful things this last year brought, at least the roads were a bit clear, and if you had to drive somewhere, you could get there easily. Not the case anymore. Everybody's back to their crazy driving, crowded, impolite selves, and I was having not a good day at the grocery store because I had two people cut me off in the parking lot. It's like, what is going on? And you know what happens whenever you are getting into a situation where you're frustrated at the wheel. You perhaps get a bit reckless. I took a wrong turn and almost ran into a person, and I saw a gesture I hadn't seen in a while. Mostly because I haven't really been interacting with people or driving, but also, like, people were more polite to each other for a while, it seems. Anyway, this guy gave me the finger, and I hadn't seen the finger in a while. And it got me thinking, where did we come up with the finger? Why do we see that as such a profane gesture? And I am, of course, talking about the middle finger. You know the one. If you are of a certain age, you are well aware of what the middle finger is. And chances are you've probably given it once or twice, or 3 times or 4 times. I don't know. I used to play punk music and I gave it all the time. I went ahead for our next segment and looked up the history of the middle finger. And I actually learned a lot. Giving the finger, or flipping the bird, or flipping someone off, or flicking someone off, whatever you may know it as, is an obscene and profane gesture that dates back to ancient Greece. I really didn't know that. And its meaning really hasn't changed in the thousands of years that it has been used. In researching this, I of course went to Wikipedia, and I just have to read verbatim their description of this because it's so clinical and so authoritative, and it just makes me giggle. The gesture communicates moderate to extreme contempt. I love how that's put. Yes, moderate to extreme contempt, because yeah, you might be using it towards a friend, just like, buddy, or you could be using it when you are just so frustrated or angry at somebody, like the guy in the parking lot the other day. This next part is great. It is performed by showing the back of a hand that has only the middle finger extended upwards, though in some locales, the thumb is extended. Shout out to you, Wikipedia author. This is such a non-biased description of the middle finger. Nobody has thought this much about the middle finger. It is, of course, a non-verbal way of communicating the F word or anything related to the F word. But it is not always used contemptuously. Sometimes it's used jokingly, maybe even affectionately. Like my partner and I usually give each other the finger just as a joke. And I think the first person to ever give me the finger was my big brother, maybe directly. And he definitely did it as a joke and almost as like a rite of passage. Like, hey, I'm giving you the finger. You're old enough to understand what this means now. Of course, I wasn't old enough. I think I cried, but I was a sensitive little kid. Anyway, shout out to you, Sam, for giving me the finger. As I said before, the finger dates back to ancient Greece, where the middle finger itself represented a certain piece of male anatomy. I'm not going to say which, but I'm sure you can guess. And the fingers to the side of the middle finger that are kept down represent two other pieces of male anatomy that I'm only going to infer and not say aloud. But once again, I'm sure you can guess. The ancient Greeks used the finger in a derogatory manner, of course, with intent to intimidate or simply insult someone who they were gesturing towards. But also, the middle finger was used as an explicit counter to the evil eye. The evil eye, of course, being a mean or pointed gesture that one would give to another person in order to curse them. Once again, another thing that has subsisted through the years, I've had people give me the evil eye before. I don't know if it was in a manner to curse me, but I certainly felt insulted. Socrates, the philosopher, actually went on record to comment on the middle finger as both boorish and stupid. And in Latin, the middle finger was known as the digitus imputicus, meaning shameless, indecent, or offensive finger. There are even ancient accounts of witches using the middle finger as a specific component in casting evil spells. Giving the finger has existed culturally throughout the ages, as you very well know, and exists to modern day. And in between ancient times and now, it has been used in quite a few famous ways. In 1968, soldiers of the USS Pueblo were captured by North Korean naval forces and forced to do photography for propaganda. Unfortunately for the North Korean military forces, they were unaware of the significance of the finger, and when the soldiers were photographed giving the finger, people understood that the attempts at propaganda were not genuine. There have been so many instances of the middle finger being used in political statements, whether it's toward a political leader, a president, a king. There is so much photography out there of protesters or simply opponents to a particular cause giving the finger to a political leader, and a lot of those photos are seen as dramatic and poignant, almost in denial that the gesture is meant to be not taken sincerely or to be taken jokingly. It's something that has existed for so long that it almost permeates the entire worldwide culture. Not to mention that the middle finger has been used in music, in movies, in TV shows. It exists everywhere. Heck, there is an emoji of the middle finger that you can access right now and send to your friend and be like, "Hey, Dave, something like that." It is hard to deny the pervasiveness and versatility of something like the middle finger. It doesn't mean just one thing. The overall concept is pretty well and universally communicated, but there's just so many ways that you can talk to somebody with something like the middle finger. It could mean, "Hey, I don't like you." It could mean, "Hey, we're friends and you said something that made me a little upset." Or, "Hey, you said something that made me jokingly upset." It could mean, "Go away." It could mean, "Hey, I think you're a bad driver." It could mean, "Hey, you were rude to me." It could be something that you do behind somebody's back for nothing more than your own self-gratification. But whatever way you slice it, we have always had the middle finger, and we may always need the middle finger. Now, I think I've said middle finger enough for this week's podcast, and I may be violating our safe for work protocols for this podcast if I talk about it any longer. But such a concept did get me thinking, and so I went to social media and asked, what is your favorite non-swear swear word? And what I mean by that is, do you have a cute little word that you use instead of a more traditional swear? Like maybe you're around your little sister or your 4-year-old niece, or maybe you're just trying to be cute, or maybe you're at work. I don't know. But one thing that I like to say is crumbs. And there's never really a reason. It's just sometimes I don't want to swear. So I'll lose at a video game, or I'll bump my knee, or I'll forget my mask before I leave the house, and I'll go, crumbs. That's one of my favorite ones. And I wanted to ask the public what they used. Susan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And yes, I did just pronounce the entire username. Susan says, I'll just screech as loud as I can. And I have to say that beyond saying crumbs or just yelling the F word myself, I also just love to screech. So it's good to see someone out there using the same thing. Skyhawk96 from TikTok says, and this one's a classic, they say simply fudge with a question mark. So fudge. Yep. That's a good one around kids, because who doesn't love fudge? Probably Notion from TikTok says, what the fart? And I don't know if that qualifies. It still contains a rude word. I'll let it pass, because you can say something like that on TV, but you're on thin ice. Iced Out 2815 says forking shirt. I did my best to pronounce every consonant just so I wouldn't sound like I was saying something else, and I think that's kind of the point. Black Karen Shakifa says cheese and rice, and I've heard that one before too. That's one of my favorites as well. Jason M. Cross from TikTok actually came with a video reply, and I'm going to play that one for you now.
Fart knocker. Fudgesicle. Farfignugan.
Thanks, Jason, though I knew what you were doing by trying to hold out the F. You're trying to freak us all out on the podcast. Otherwise, I commend you. Thank you for the response. I did get one response off of Twitter from Nell Gumford. Not an answer, but says, fortunately, there are no children in my life. I guess that's them saying that they love to swear openly and as offensively as possible. And to you, I say, good for you. Sometimes we just got to get those frustrations out, you know? It's such a weird thing that we have bad words. It makes sense to me and it doesn't make sense to me all at the same time. Like, what? It's just a word that means nothing. We have a word that we just shout when we're frustrated, or we have a gesture that we just use when we're frustrated. Why do we do that? And furthermore, why is it not acceptable in polite society to do so? I don't know. Personally, I don't have a definite answer, and I'm not equipped to answer that at this moment. Maybe we'll do a segment on it in the future. In the meantime, if you have a favorite swear word, a favorite non-swear swear word, or you have anything related to your personal experience with offensive behavior, please hit me up on social media. Once again, I am on Twitter and Instagram. And hey, if you just want to talk, if you perhaps have an idea for the podcast, if you have a weird story that you want to share with me, I am always a listening ear, and I love ideas for new segments. This is a fun show that we do multiple times a week, and we are always looking for weird news. That's why I absolutely encourage you to hit us up, as well as find us on all manner of podcast apps that you may use. Check out some of our other shows. We've got more than weird news going on here, though I will have to say weird news is my favorite. Maybe I have a bias. I've had such a wonderful time with you guys today, but the fun's not over yet. After the break, we are going to go over the fascinating subject of alternate reality games. Once again, if you're not aware of what these are, I am more than happy to explain them to you. And then once you are well in on the secret that is the ARG, we're going to go over my top 5 alternate reality games throughout the ages. And I think that you will be so convinced by hearing about some of these that you may just want to participate yourself. Anyway, this is the GSMC Weird News Podcast, and we'll be back after the break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
You are listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I am your ever-present and always watching host, Mark Swan, and at the top of the hour, we were visiting a strange supposed time traveler as they used the medium of TikTok to get their predictions of the future out into the world. I truly do encourage you to find this user on TikTok because they are making a lot of fascinating content. They are once again Time Traveler 2485 on TikTok, and they are making new content all the time. Some of it is spooky, some of it is scary. It's all pretty funny just because of the execution of it. But why would someone go on TikTok or any other social media platform and claim to be a time traveler? There are a couple reasons why. Mostly have to do with attention. Perhaps it's promotion for something. But it's very possible that this Time Traveler 2485 is participating in an alternate reality game. I've been teasing this term throughout the whole segment, and I'm sure there are listeners out there who are familiar with the term, but I am even more sure that there are people who do not know what an alternate reality game, or shrunk down to an ARG, is. When people think of games as a medium, they're most likely referencing something like sports or a board game, or more modernly, they think of games as video games. I know that I game. When I'm gaming, it means I'm playing video games. But there is an emergent and underground type of gaming that has been popping up since the 80s called alternate reality gaming, and it's quite unique. An alternate reality game is an organized event that uses the real world as its playing field, and anybody participating, whether they know they are or not, as its players. ARGs enforce a sort of grassroots storytelling using mediums such as television, radio, but most commonly the internet, and most of the time are executed with the expectation that the players are acting as though this game is happening as if it's real life. Think of it like a role-playing game, except you are playing yourself, and you are not so much pretending that the story before you is real, but you are participating in events and puzzles and occurrences that sort of make it real. ARGs are reliant on the detailed and intense interactions between the community playing the game and the company that is hosting the game. And speaking of those behind alternate reality games, such events can happen by way of a small outfit, maybe even one or two people who are running something on the internet for others to play and enjoy, to huge marketing and branding projects by big name companies. Many alternate reality games out there are being run by movie studios or other advertising firms that are trying to get you into their branding for an upcoming project, like a movie, a video game. Sometimes there are ARGs for soft drinks. And meanwhile, there are games out there that are being told by one or two people who are just trying to tell a really interesting story in a unique way. I would not be surprised if our friend Time Traveler 2485 was a component in a larger ARG game for some sort of product or story. I really wouldn't. All this kind of stuff goes on all the time. The purpose of an ARG is to engulf you in the story, immerse you in it, make you think that you are part of something that is actually going on. Sometimes it's manipulative, sometimes it is wholesome, but usually the goal is to try and engross you in a story and make you a part of it as a player. These types of games use a wide array of puzzles of varying difficulties and ways of presentation, either if it's trying to figure out a simple number logic puzzle on a basic internet site, to looking at a secret code found in the spectral image of an audio file. And oftentimes players are engaging with real people who are actors in trying to move the game forward. Many times the only reward that players get for participating in a game like this is the thrill and excitement for playing. but there have been instances of cash rewards as well as merchandise and other tangible gifts given to those who help complete the game. There are alternate reality game enthusiasts all throughout the world who are constantly looking for the next ARG to pop up, and that's one of the things I love most about this particular concept is they usually pop up without announcement. There might be a subtle hint from a company that's trying to start one, or there might be like a wriggling in some news outlet's ear that something is about to start. But for the most part, these games start as an innocuous video on the internet, or a short story that shows up in somebody's mailbox, or a phone call that somebody receives. And by word of mouth, these things start. It's very organic. It's completely emergent. I love it. I just used those two words earlier, but I cannot stress how much it's so cool that something as massive as a game that is played worldwide can start so subtly. And if I haven't convinced you of dropping down the rabbit hole of alternate reality games, perhaps I can get you into it with my top 5 alternate reality games of all time. These are some really cool experiences that I've read about. Unfortunately, I didn't participate in any of these, but I'd like to share them with you regardless. Number 5 is an alternate reality game that got a lot of coverage and actually got a lot of people into the medium. This is a cool little game called I Love Bees. In October of 2004, in movie theaters around the world, many people were excited to see the cinematic trailer for the Xbox game Halo 2. If you are like me, you are a big fan of this game. And if you were like me back in 2004, you got super excited to see this trailer. However, there was something a little off about it, because at the end, a website flashed on the screen for a single moment before the trailer ended. And any person watching who was quick-witted enough would make note of the URL. At the same time, random people were receiving boxes in the mail that contained jars of honey with a note inside that had the same URL. That URL was for ilovebees.com. When users typed the URL into their web browsers, they were taken to a seemingly innocent website for a beekeeping blog and storefront. However, after some investigation, users soon found evidence of a rogue AI who had traveled back in time to cry for help that something dangerous was coming, and they had unfortunately got stuck in the primitive technology of 2004 internet, in which case they were using I Love Bees to try and give a desperate warning message. I won't go into the details. You can look it up. It is a long and complicated story, but it was such a cool implementation of having players try and figure out puzzle after puzzle while they tried to stop this rogue AI from taking over a website. One of the best things about it is that after solving one of the puzzles, the AI gave GPS coordinates to a real payphone in the middle of the desert, and people who went there at a specific time would answer its ringing to supposedly talk to the program about the next steps. This was, of course, a promotional tactic for Halo 2, and the end result was getting a very extensive and detailed look into the story of that game, and it was incredibly rewarding for players. But furthermore, it made so many more people aware of ARGs as a concept, and for that we have I Love Bees to thank. Number 4 is the Wyoming incident. This is a massive alternate reality game that started on the web in 2006 with a single creepy and confusing video of a bunch of mannequin heads followed by some cryptic language. The story is so convoluted, but basically got people thinking that they had found a forum where serial killers talked in code about how they hunted their victims. What would happen over the course of years and years is a tale that players actively participated in about a dark cult trying to awaken an evil god. What's crazy about this one is that the ARG is still technically running to this day, and we still don't know who is behind it. But there are novels and novels and novels of cool storytelling happening from this one, and it's all under the assumption that it's all very real. Number 3 on our list is a fairly recent ARG called PB Here. This is a cool one. It takes place on TikTok, and it stars a CGI Muppet-looking fellow as he tries to escape a house. Why this one is so cool is because it's fully animated, like there's an animation team behind it, and the main character, despite being a cartoon, will actively interact with people who are playing. It's also a really clever use of TikTok. Even though I use the platform, I'm not super big on it, but I do like clever things like this. So if you're a TikTok addict, look up PB Here. It is still going on. Number 2 is a favorite among many, and it's quite likely that even if you're not aware of ARGs out there, you still may have heard of this one. This one is Marble Hornets. If you are a fan of independent horror, you are most likely familiar with Marble Hornets. This was a 5-year running YouTube series with dozens, if not hundreds, of YouTube videos about a young man who is trying to find his old friends who helps him make an independent movie and the supernatural problems that they face. This one is significant because it pretty much helped kickstart the horror entity known as the Slender Man into like stardom popularity. The main antagonist of this series is the Slender Man, and I love Slender Man stuff. I know that he is passé, but I could absolutely do an entire segment on him in the future, and I probably will. A really fascinating subject. If you're unaware who the Slender Man is, he is a monster made entirely by an internet forum that became so famous that he got his own movie, and he actually caused some controversy in the real world. Marble Hornets started as a pretty small film project, but ultimately grew into an alternate reality game of its own that many users participated in puzzles to try and help save the main characters, as well as piece together the strange and overarching story. This is a big, fun one for horror fans. Even though the game still isn't going on, you can go back and watch all the YouTube videos. It is super cool, super spooky. Looking into the games themselves, they're quite clever. A lot of times there were clues that could be found in the videos to help solve puzzles. A lot of times there were new puzzles and missions proposed in the videos themselves. This one had a record number of users participate, and it was basically entirely independent. And why that's so cool is because these guys did this for little to no budget, and still it became such a worldwide phenomenon that there are even movies and TV shows based off of it. And as far as I understand it, the outfit that started it is doing something new now. The last entry on our list may be a controversial one. I think there are people out here who would argue that this was not an alternate reality game, but a real occurrence. And to this day, there is no answer or conclusion. This is Cicada 3301. And honestly, if there is anybody out there who is an alternate reality game fan, I might get some angry emails. I don't know. We'll see. But Cicada 3301 has been called the most elaborate and mysterious puzzle of the internet age. The event itself started with a single puzzle posted on an internet forum on 2012, and it was ridiculously difficult to figure out. Throughout the course of the game, it was stated that the purpose was to find highly intelligent individuals for the sake of acclimating them to a secret society for the goal of improving cryptography, privacy, and anonymity. While there were other people playing the game who uncovered some ideas that the puzzles were used to indoctrinate people into a cult. Players who solved some of these puzzles were contacted by a mysterious representative who asked them their thoughts and opinions on internet anonymity, as well as code breaking and other weird topics. The outfit behind Cicada 3301 released several clues in many interesting ways to solving their problems, but these puzzles were ultimately so complex that the US Navy developed a code-breaking challenge that was based on the game's puzzles. That's super cool. There's still no answer or solution to the overarching story of Cicada 3301, and there's no evidence to say that it was actually a game at all. In fact, like I said before, a lot of people think that this was actually a real thing, not a game whatsoever, that there is actually a secret organization out there looking for the best and brightest to help make new forms of cryptography and code. Even if Cicada 3301 isn't an alternate reality game per se, I still think it belongs on this list just because it got a lot of people thinking and playing and participating in something that made this world just a little more wonderful and a little weirder. That's it from me today, folks. It has been a pleasure bringing the weird news to you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you.